Hello and welcome back to the academyofworship.org YouTube channel, where we're giving you the tools and the ideas and the things to make good music. I'm rocking the lumberjack look today. Hopefully that's not too distracting for everybody. Today we're talking about modulation. What is modulation? How do I use modulation? How do you use modulation? I guess first we should probably talk about what modulation is. Generally speaking, it's this. Think of this as your guitar signal, a nice flat line. Now think of another signal being added to it that goes around that line. Now when you mix those two things together, you get what's called a modulated sound. You've probably heard of these effects. They are things like chorus, flanger, or phase, or phaser, and things like that. Now today I'm not going to demonstrate all of the ways you can use modulation, just kind of touch on them, because I think that in the worship community, modulation's used sparingly nowadays. If you went over to Spotify or something like that and pulled up an 80s playlist or something, you would hear a lot of modulation. What does it sound like? Let's get right to it. These are the sound examples. So the first thing I want to show you is probably the most common thing used, and that's going to be chorus. Like the rest of the videos that I've put out in this series, we're not going to be talking about specifically what chorus pedal I'm using. However, all of the things that apply to chorus are going to be common among all pedals. Some pedals may have more features, some pedals may have less. In my case, I have two knobs, rate and depth. And these two things make it sound drastically different depending on where you set them. So here's my clean guitar sound. Okay, now I'm going to add chorus. Right now the two knobs, rate and depth, are straight up. So it's a fairly subtle sound. You can hear it, definitely, compared to my clean sound. But as you can tell, there's a slight warble to the sound, and that's what chorus is doing, just like I described earlier. You have your normal guitar sound, and on top of that, you have a sound that is modulating over it. We're going to set it to some more extreme settings so that you can really hear what chorus can do. For instance, let's play with the rate knob. Now, the rate knob is how fast... I feel funny doing that. How fast that modulation is going to happen, okay? So you're going to hear it speed up as I turn the knob clockwise, which means faster. Here we go. So you heard it speed up. It's not as prominent. Now, the depth knob is the one that's going to make all of this even more prominent. So the depth knob is how deep those peaks and valleys are in the waveform that's being added to our guitar signal. You're going to hear how the rate is even more pronounced. Here we go. That was what I would call a medium-high rate and depth for the chorus, so it's really pronounced. You can hear how this would be used as more of a featured effect as opposed to something you would just keep on all the time. Now, there are people who like chorus on their guitar sound all the time, but they usually keep it in a more subtle setting so that it's not as pronounced as what we just heard. Now, some chorus pedals can be run in stereo, some of them in mono. In this case, we're listening to a mono guitar signal. When you run it in stereo, some people will run a chorus pedal to simply spread things out from left to right when you're listening in in-ear monitors, or maybe if you're in a stereo setup somewhere with amps. In most cases, you're going to probably use a chorus in its more moderate settings. In certain instances, you may want to turn it up to get that warble effect. Let's hear what it sounds like dimed on both rate and depth. That's kind of getting into the territory what they call the seasick. It's where everything warbles a whole bunch and it just kind of... Yeah, that's a thing. So that's chorus. That's a more common effect. Now let's go into one that maybe isn't as common, but is just as cool. It's called phaser. In my case, the phaser pedal that I have has a single knob called speed. I'm going to go all the way from totally counterclockwise, which is the slowest, and you're going to hear almost a comb filter, a filter through the guitar sound. It's an interesting sound. Let's check it out. You can hear how it's almost a wah filter on it, sort of, but it's doing the same thing to our signal that the chorus did, which is adding a modulated signal on top of it. You can go look it up, Google it. Let's sweep the knob even more and see what it sounds like. I'm gonna put it about halfway now. You're gonna hear the effect much more pronounced. Let's see what that sounds like. So that's a really good example of phaser. When you hear a phaser, it's very recognizable because it has that certain tonality to it when it does that thing it does to your signal that's really hard to mistake for any other effect. Let's go crazy and turn it all the way up and see what it does. Whoa. It was almost like a tremolo. It was so high in speed. So that's basically what a phaser sounds like. I'd say that when you use a phaser, if you're going for the phaser sound, you're going for the sound that was probably about the midway point of the pedal speed that I have. Now again, all pedals are different, so you may have one that has more than one knob on it. They sometimes are similar in chorus with speed and rate. Now to move on to more modulation effects. This one is called Tremolo. Now I will say this one's probably used more in worship, much like the delay we talked about. It could have a tap tempo on it. So you could tap to tempo your tremolo. What does a tremolo sound like? Well, let's check it out. This is going to be a moderate setting on the tremolo. You can hear how it makes your sound warble, but it's different. It's going up and down in volume, modulating the amplitude of your signal. You hear this effect in a lot of Western electric guitar, but in worship music, a lot of time they'll put it behind a picking part or something that just needs to kind of sit on its own. Like every effect we're talking about in this video, use it with moderation and use it where appropriate. The fourth and final modulation we're going to talk about in this video is going to be what's called a flanger. Now, a flanger is similar to a chorus and a phaser in that it does that whole modulate your signal and make it warble thing, but it sounds different. So we're gonna start with a fairly moderate setting like we have been. You're gonna hear what the pedal sounds like just in a general setting. So that's fairly normal for a flanger pedal. And what we're going to do now is turn it up to an extreme setting, kind of get into that jet airplane settings. This is something you'd hear more like in a Van Halen setting and some extreme rock settings where they kind of use this as an effect to, well, ramp up into something and to really emphasize a part. So it does sound like a jet airplane. Let's check it out. And there you have it. That's it for today. Those are some good common modulation effects. We had chorus, we had phaser, we had tremolo, and we had flanger. As always, we want you to get in there and flip switches, turn knobs, take it from one extreme to the other. Remember, these are just tools, and you can use them however you want, however you need to. Make a unique sound. That's what they're there for, to enhance what you already got going on. And that's it. I want to invite you to like the video. I want to read your comments, so please leave them below. I want to invite you also to head on over to academyofworship.org. I have a free gift over there I'd love for you to download. It's going to help you out immensely, I promise. But until next time, see you later.